Hello, all you people. Welcome to the very first track on this musical journey we're calling Got the Podlife. Hello there, I am Bobby Munson, and joining me on this musical adventure, none other than my rock and roll brother right there beside me, the gold standard, Karl Karufel. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. I am more than happy to get this started. Got the Podlife, I think, is going to be absolutely killer. I'm excited for this. Excited to talk just music that we like.
I couldn't agree with you more. And as you'll see on the ticker down below, everybody, this is a pre-recorded show. So are we going to listen to your comments? Of course we are. Just drop them there for us. And myself and Karl are going to be checking those things, talking to you. And if you got suggestions for music you'd like for us to talk about on a future episode of Got the Podlife, then let us know what are your favorites. And also let us know about the subject matter today. And I say this is pre-recorded. It is exactly right now, Friday, August the 18th, since Korn released their third studio album and the one that skyrocketed their fame into the mainstream. We're talking about the album Follow the Leader there. So 25 years since Follow the Leader. We will talk a little bit more in depth about that, but wow, it really makes you realize just how old you are when you think about how old these albums are.
Right, going all the way back to like 1993. Yes, that's how far back I go with it. L.A.P.D. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, that's kind of originally what three members of the band L.A.P.D. Kind of came together to be Korn, which holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, I didn't listen at the time of L.A.P.D., so you were fortunate enough to hear them prior to the formation and what they became. I remember picking up the self-titled album, which dropped in 1994, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I remember walking into a CD store at the time and somebody making the recommendation, 11-year-old me at the CD store, that this band was going to be amazing. Sounds great. Hook me up. Let's get this thing home. And there we go. I had listened to stuff like Rage Against the Machine at this point in time already. So it's not like I wasn't accustomed to the style, but this took it to a different level entirely. I mean, I love Rage Against the Machine, but let's say the argument is always there. The Korn kind of pioneered the big new metal of the 1990s era as a result of what the style that they ended up producing, which it is a little different from what L.A.P.D. was. There was some tweaks to it once Jonathan Davis came aboard.
Yeah, there definitely was. I mean, Jonathan Davis has such an iconic voice with his singing. The scats that he can do on tracks is absolutely insane. And like just that whole dynamic of like years past scatting, to bring that into metal, to include the guitar riffs, to include that deep bass sound coming out of Korn, to bring all of that together, genius, man, genius.
And let's not forget those bagpipes.
Oh, right. Right. Played by Jonathan Davis.
Yes. And I know I've talked to you about this before, but when I got to see them live was during the this would have been the Issues tour. And when they did this, they had this kind of stage set up where it looked like a fancy mansion of a house with these two staircases that came down to the middle. And when they started off, you got the bagpipe introduction that you hear with the song. I believe it's called what's the beginning? Sorry, I should have written this down, but the beginning of the Issues album, the track on there.
Oh, yes. You know what? I can find that super quick for me.
Oh, it's I'm on it. Make Me Bad.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. So Make Me Bad opens up this set with Jonathan Davis on the bagpipes coming up through the stage. So airlifting through the stage and then coming out with that like soft vocal track. And then of course just hitting the heavy from there. Always such an amazing blend of stuff. Yeah. And such an experimental band. This is the thing I never thought I'd get when I first started listening to Korn. I thought this was what they were. This was never going to change. And talking about a band that has tried to push different genres and different boundaries with their styles over the year, sometimes to the love and admiration of some and not so much others. There is times that people don't feel that they connect with it as much. But I think as we dissect these albums a little bit further, we'll get into that. So I think it's safe to say if we start with that opening album, the first self-titled album there, known as Korn, it's coming in with that first little, I don't want to say the riff because you got the opening hi-hat cymbals coming in from David, and then all of a sudden you get the da-na-na-na. I mean, right there, you're hooked, and then feel these bass coming in. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, you knew you were in for something special, and that whole album's special right the way through, from like the start to finish. Everything on there is just absolutely solid. And what I liked about a lot of tracks that they do, especially finishing tracks on albums, is to go into that like dark place that they go, something really deep and dark that Jonathan Davis gets himself into, and you can hear that kind of that emotion coming out at the end of the album that really just kind of leaves you like, wow, like with that power. And that you get that here with this album, this first album from them. And it was one of the reasons that really drew me into the band to begin with.
So I made sure that I got the album because I was like, yep, this is going to be really cool. I actually think I'm going to like this. The artwork for the original was something a little bit different. It was not the norm of what you really see when it comes to, right? So like they've got that swing set, right? And just that dark, ominous shadow with the girl that's swinging, and then just Korn. And it like that caught me right away. I'm like, this looks interesting. But then, like you said, when you come right into the album, starting out with Blind, it is, I'm pretty sure.
Yep, Blind is the opener.
And then something again, totally different. The way that they ended this album off with Daddy.
Daddy, yeah.
Being 17 minutes and 31 seconds with about 10 minutes of just dead airtime in between.
Yeah.
So you know that it's not finished, but it's continuing on, and you're like, what am I waiting for? Why am I even waiting? But then when the hidden track comes in, you're like, whoa, this was well worth the wait.
Oh yeah.
And I had never seen that from another album. So again, another just simple, small, little innovative thing that from there I was like, I'm hooked. I am just hooked.
Yeah. And who could complain? It is a great album. Still stands the test of time as one of the strongest in the entire discography. And many would actually argue maybe they're best at times, but arguments can be made for some of the other albums in this catalog. And one of those could be that, this one turned a lot of fans into them at this point was Life is Peachy. This started to nab a lot more attention. It wasn't quite the commercial success as the next album will be, but Life is Peachy turned some heads at this point. This one is far more dark and brooding than what we got with the first album. This is almost like, I would argue that it's borderline on the edge of a gothic piece of Korn's discography. And it's very, very dark and interesting, layered beautifully. Also, I love the fact that Head got to do the little bit of a cover, the Tone Loc here on this one with Lowrider. I thought that was just a nice little piece in the middle. I know it's just the band having fun, but when they're having fun and doing little pieces like that, I do enjoy it. You can really tell the connection that they have in the studio when they're doing things like that. And I believe from a video I saw once, it was actually Head's birthday when they did that in the studio. It happened to be that, so he got to do that on his birthday while they were celebrating his birthday during the recording.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I absolutely I didn't know that. That is something that I did not know. I've always enjoyed it. I've always loved listening to that. And I mean, it's only like, it's less than a minute long. that little lowrider that's in there, but it was just like, you know what? Yeah, this is cool. I'm really digging this. That entire album itself as well. There was a few things that were just a little bit different and a little bit off that I wasn't really a huge fan of. Mr. Rogers wasn't one of the big ones, right? Swallow wasn't one of the big ones, right? But then you get like Twist, which is that one there again. You talked about standing the test of time. I think for sure Twist is definitely going to, because it's even on social medias today, like TikTok. There are TikToks out there using that sound, using that song, and it's like, holy shit. But then probably the biggest one off of that track, which coming soon is going to be a collaboration for a pair of shoes. That's right, we're talking about Adidas.
Well, yes, and we will save the poor innocent ears of the world from knowing the true meaning behind ADIDAS. But definitely go check out that very, very messed up music video that accompanies this song from the band.
Right.
If that didn't make you think twice about this band in the 90s, I don't know who you were.
At that time, okay, so when Adidas came out with that music video, and yes, back then there was MTV and there was Much Music that was actually showing music videos on television.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Not, reality television that it is now. But this was a way for them to really solidify their fan base. So after seeing this, so you may have been a fan of, the first Korn album, but then after seeing this music video, it either pushed you away or just drew you closer. For me, it drew me closer to Korn. And I know a lot of people that were like, you know what, the first album was absolutely amazing, but after, that album, I just wasn't a fan anymore. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. For me, lifelong.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, despite there being, and I'll talk about like a couple of hiccups I wasn't as big a fan of along their discography, still hasn't ever turned me off of the band entirely. I always knew that they could come back and do things that I prefer and stuff, but we'll get to that. And again, I did re-listen to the entire catalog in preparation for this exact showing so that I could give an honest opinion, because it's been a while since I had sat down and gone back to back through the entire catalog of Korn. And man, what a trip that was. It was awesome to just go listen to it straight through. It was fantastic. Right. But after Life is Peachy, here's again where mainstream kicked in. And in the 90s, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, when bands got commercial success, it tended to be that they got told they were sellouts. They had sold their souls to the devil.
Right.
This came about true for Korn. At this point in time, when Follow the Leader came out, they became very successful. The sound definitely made a shift from what it was on Life is Peachy. Still keeping a signature sound about them, but they had gone into a bit more of that kind of like rap metal. And some of the songs on Got the Life, of course, which is the influence of the name of the show here, as well as the big one, Freak on a Leash, were just, very successful commercial tracks. In fact, Freak on a Leash winning a Grammy for Best Music Video that year, directed by, and I believe it's MacFarlane. I think it's Seth MacFarlane, but it's funny because he shares a similar name to. No, we're not talking about the Family Guy creator. Right. We're talking about Spawn's daddy when it comes to this one. But he was the director and creator of the Follow the Leader music video, which is mind-boggling. Just a mind-boggling, awesome video that people should go check out. That is so cool what he did with the artistic group. Yeah, whatever.
Artistry. The artistry from Todd McFarlane. It's Todd McFarlane. Right? Yeah. Was just absolutely fantastic. The incorporation of dark Disney, I'm going to call it. Yeah. Okay, because Disney really did something like this first. Disney was able to take the drawn cartoon and mix it in with real life actors, which is essentially what this was as well with Freak on a Leash. It was that, whole artistry that was there, but then kind of the transition into the real life, and then kind of the back and forth that was there with it was just visually kind of mind melding a little bit. That, it was just kind of like, okay, what's going on? But then you're following the leader as you're going through watching this entire music video, and it just grips you because you're invested in it. It's almost as if it's like a 4-minute movie that you're watching, and it totally broke the barrier, I think, when it came to the stylizations of music videos. It had been done in the past. It definitely had been, and it done afterwards as well. But I didn't really latch on to any of that until I saw Korn do it.
Yeah, again, and so much to admire about this album, but there is a very large hiccup on this album. The band themselves have even admitted to the hiccup on this album. The recording of a track done with frontman from Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst. We're talking about a song that also influenced the name of their tour that would come up, and that it would be a continuation tour for years to come, Family Values Tour. We're talking about the song All in the Family. And this is not, even when I went back on this, I'm like, I will forever probably skip All in the Family moving forward. This song did not age well. No. It was a sign of the times, but it is a bad song.
It was okay. So if everyone can understand, you have seen different TV shows, or even like the Eminem movie 8 Mile that came out, where you had rap battles, right? And they were diss tracks, essentially. That's what All in the Family really felt like. It just felt like it was a rock version or a metal version of a rap diss track, but they're all in the same room singing this song.
Yeah.
It was very odd, not done very well, in my opinion. And it's one, just like you, I skip over it. I tried the other day to listen to it, and I'm just like,
nope.
No, I can't do it. I can't. I think I listened to about 50 seconds of it, and I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah. It's a small blemish on an otherwise great album, because an album that even like for songs that aren't singles, like stuff like Justin is a fantastic track on this album. Things like that, Children of the Corn, I really dig that track there that they do. Or even better yet is the hidden track on here. And we're talking a cover of Cheech and Chong's Earache My Eye, which was just perfectly placed and done on this album. And I love the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, the band members switched up the instruments they were playing during the recording of this.
That could very well be. I have heard that. I don't have any concrete proof of that, but I have heard the same thing.
Comments made anyway.
Yeah. And just so that everybody knows,
journalism, we don't know for sure, but we've heard.
Right? We've heard. Wink, wink. This was the first album that Korn collaborated with other artists. So you talked about Children of the Corn, which featured Ice Cube.
Yeah.
But they also had Cameltosis, which featured Trey Hardson.
Yes.
And then, the Fred Durst, bullshit that happened there, right? So, Trey Hardson was better known by his stage name, Slim Kid 3, was just an American rapper from L.A. Really an unknown, and still to this day pretty much an unknown, but added what was needed to that song. And I don't think that it would be the same if he was not there for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
let's make the count now. So that's 3 albums that we've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And is that 3 hidden tracks now on 3 different albums? It sure is.
Yeah. I mean, they typically do though. Like they've become quite well known for it. I'm trying to think if I remember there not being something, or at least an extended play on one of the final tracks, kind of thing that has more to it, kind of, like that kind of stuff that tends to be layered in there. But they become very well known for it. But I think honestly, Earache My Eye is probably one of my favorite hidden tracks, just because of my admiration for Cheech and Chong to begin with, and I love the song. Grew up watching those movies, so I loved that moment of being able to hear that done by Korn at the time, and I thought they were perfect for doing it. Now, going on, this was something that not a lot of bands were doing back in this period of time. So a lot of bands were leaving a minimum of about 2 to 3 years between album releases at this time. And all of a sudden, Korn comes along, Follow the Leader's a massive success, and they say, by the way, we're dropping a new album 1 year after Follow the Leader. We're bringing you guys Issues. And everyone was, well, how? Like, what? How do you? Yeah, exactly. Karl sporting the shirt. Issues comes along 1 year after Follow the Leader, and talk about, this is the point in time where a lot of the fan base that came along for Follow the Leader, this is what started to divide some of that fan base, some of the original fan base especially, because where even I had friends that loved the first 3 albums, Issues became a problem for them, because this one, a little bit darker, a little bit softer. This is not quite the heavy and upbeat that they were used to hearing from the group at this point. This had a very much more melodic pacing to the entire album. Personally, after going back to listening to this, I not only agree with the fact that I loved it in the first place, I think I love it more now, hearing it in the context of their discography. I think Issues is a very underrated piece of art through this. And of course, the nice thing, that is the cover that was officially picked, but there are 4 existing covers, 4 issues, all that were fan made. The band had fans come up with artwork for the albums, and that one made number 1, and the other 3 that were right behind it were also chosen as alternatives. So officially, you can get 4 different versions of the Issues album.
So I never found the 2nd place and the 4th place covers, but I did at one time find in a record store the 3rd place cover, which was the drawn out caricatures of the band members.
Okay.
I did see that one in a record store at one time. The other 2 I didn't, and I think that I would have liked to have, because I actually really enjoyed the 2nd album cover, although the one that won, absolutely gorgeous. Like I'm sporting the shirt right now for that. I love it. But I really liked the 2nd one because it was that dark that is Korn, right?
Are you talking about the silhouette of the person and the doorway?
Yeah.
Got the news. That's the one I own.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the CD I bought, but I saw it because I was like, that one's my winner. So I had to get that copy of it, and that's the one I've always had. Yeah.
I absolutely love that one. Yeah. Because it's got like that dark in the center, but then like there's that beacon of light, that gold, yellowish gold patina that is around it.
With newspaper articles. It's embedded newspaper article within it, kind of thing. So yeah, it's superb. I loved that. I can't remember the artist that did that one, but they had my vote 100% because I loved it. It's not that I don't like the one that was chosen or the other 2 alternatives, but that one stood out the most for me personally.
Me too. It always has. I think it always will. If I find it somewhere, I'm definitely going to be picking it up at some point.
If I come across a copy, Karl, I'll make sure to pick it up for you as well too. Perfect. I also wanted to mention that this is also the time that Korn got to make an appearance, and something that's rare because not a lot of celebrities make an appearance on this actual show. They make fun of celebrities on this show quite often, but don't actually have the actual celebrities on it. Korn appeared in an episode of the show South Park on a Halloween special where it was very Scooby-Doo like, and they were being haunted by a bunch of ghost pirates. as it were. And Korn also had a very mysterious bird, I believe that was hanging out with them, their pet bird kind of thing. Hilarious, by the way. And when the town finally gets to start hearing them play their music at the end of the thing, it's just kind of looking at each other stunned, like, oh shit, this is what Korn is? Like, this is not what we thought they were.
Right.
Awesome.
You definitely was not. And good for them for getting something like that. I mean, everybody talks about you haven't made it until you've either sung with Kermit the Frog, done something with the Muppets, and I think been on The Simpsons,
or
right?
parodied, or had a song parodied by Weird Al is the other one.
Right. Yeah. But a smaller scale is South Park, because they've done so many different celebrities and used celebrity voices that it kind of gets overlooked sometimes. Good for them for being able to be a part of South Park. That's huge in my books.
Oh, for sure. And especially considering that, like, the themes behind this particular album, the first single and the one that they play in the song Falling Away From Me, deals with abuse, like domestic violence and everything like that, about just needing help. And they put up the kids helpline, suicide helplines in the music video itself. So it's very surprising to see that was kind of what was being used in something like this. And then they've got these really dark, very almost, haunting type of things that they're talking about within this album. But yeah, very underrated in my opinion. I really enjoy it. Enjoy the themes in it as well too. I thought even the marketing, that was one thing I want to touch on before we wrap up this album. The marketing on this was great because they were able to put in magazines, everybody has issues, do you? Yep. And then it would just have the date of the album. And it was so simple, but so clever that it drew you in.
100% it did. And I think part of that as well, like the commercialized side of everything, for them doing this and announcing the winner on, I believe it was MTV's Total Request Live, I think it was, where they actually announced who the winner was and got them up and gave them, I think it was a check for $20,000 or something like that, whatever it was. Like that's huge as well. Right? It's not every day that you're seeing bands being able to have that much of a showcase on a television show, right? So that really helped build for the album and for the I don't want to say notoriety of Korn, but for the popularity of Korn. Yeah, because essentially they were, with the kids helpline and with, the suicide prevention hotlines and all of these different things that they were doing to include the fans into everything. Right. And from what I've heard, I've seen some small documentaries and stuff that have been out there where people who were not even a fan of the band listened to a couple of the albums just to take part in this contest to make the album cover. Like marketing genius. I'm sorry, but that's marketing genius.
Oh, 100%. And wouldn't be the first, like the only time they ever did something that was on that wavelength. And of course, going into the very next album itself, which was Untouchables, a year following Issues coming out. So again, on that trend of just pumping these albums out, Untouchables comes out. And this time around, there was actually an opportunity, if I'm not mistaken, this was the one where the fans had a chance to pitch an idea for a music video. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the album. I'm pretty sure of it, but you were able to actually give a written idea of what your music video would be, and the winner eventually got to make and direct the music video that they had written for Korn. So right. Untouchables is one of these albums where, again, this is, I want to say, again, an underrated album because a lot of people overlooked it at the time. I think that they were still kind of hot on the fact that Issues sounded the way it did, and it was a far cry from what Follow the Leader was. I think that Untouchables kind of picked up a little bit more in terms of like not being quite as dark and melodic as what Issues was, but there was still some very dark themes to this one too. That's also showed a little bit more of the vocal skills of Jonathan Davis coming through, because they were able to transition into some tracks now that had him doing more singing as opposed to just the heavier side of what we were used to from John Davis. And say what you want. Again, you mentioned earlier about how incredible a vocalist he is. I've seen the video too, where there is an actual vocal coach online that says the one crazy thing about Jonathan Davis is from album to live concert, he does not miss a single note of what he does. He sounds the exact same as he does on the album. And that is something I truly appreciate. And you get to hear that ability more so in this album, on this particular one. And I appreciate this album for that reason.
Me too. You know what? My biggest takeaway from this album, my probably my favorite song off of this album is Hollow Life. And just because it gives us that softer Jonathan Davis that's still Jonathan, that's still Korn, that's still that hardcore metal, but kind of just showing us the vocal range that he actually has when it comes to being able to do the scats, to the snarls, to the growls, to the aggressive, to being able to be that little bit softer. So I don't want to correct you, but I want to make mention that this album was actually 3 years later.
Oh, shoot.
And not one.
I got my timing off then.
No, it's okay. This one had a little bit of like weirdness come along with it. Only because it was for a couple of years. It was, a little while longer. But they claimed that this album had cost them $3 million due to recording and living expenses. Having to retain the 15 or 18 member crew that they had for the 2 years, paying $10,000 a month for houses. And even when they had done some stuff up here in Canada, they had rented a house and had it for a while at $8,000 a month, which is insane for back then. This was what, 2002 now? So, I mean, even back 2002, that's 20 years ago. It shouldn't have cost $8,000. No. So it just interesting that they're claiming that that's how much was actually spent, when I don't know, but I don't think that it should have cost $3 million to make this album.
No, that's a riot if it costs $3 million to make. And again, that's how does a band make that kind of money back on that kind of expenses? It was. So I did just double check. Alone I Break was the name of the song. That was the one that MTV held the special contest for fans to pitch their idea for a music video. So the music video for Alone I Break is actually a fan-made video. Technically, they had the budget that was put into it, but it was their pitch to the band. The band selected them. They then became the director of that particular music video. So a huge break for some fan out there that got to go and pitch this idea to Korn, and then not only meet their favorite band, but direct one of their music videos. So again, a huge accolade there.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Like, that's, again, that fan interaction, bringing the people in, allowing them to be part of the band, essentially. Right. Yeah. So that's, again, the genius in marketing there, like, unreal.
You bet. Moving on from there, we go over to the next album, and do you want to talk about an album that is a little divisive? Even the band themselves, not big fans of this particular album. Now, I would disagree with them about this being their worst. They seem to think, at least Jonathan Davis has made statements that this is his least favorite album, I believe, in the Korn discography. Right. I wouldn't put it quite so low myself. I didn't dislike it quite like that. I don't even dislike it, to be honest with you, but it did bring a lot of interesting things, such as longtime guitarist Brian Head Welsh exited the band shortly after Take a Look in the Mirror came out. And again, like, you say what you will, it's not a terrible album, and did produce songs like Right Now, Did My Time, and if you enjoy it, y'all want a single, which is kind of amusing and funny, especially
that
based on what they were doing it about. So
yeah. Which was great. I actually do enjoy that song.
Yeah.
Right. It was just, y'all want a single, say that. Like, right. For me, not my favorite Korn album, but it definitely had its hits for me. Did My Time, clearly. Right Now, the first track on that. But for me, the hidden track. Yes, we've come back to a hidden track.
This is an interesting one.
After the first three, there weren't any hidden tracks that were on the albums until Take a Look in the Mirror, when we come back to it, which was actually a cover of Metallica's One.
Yep.
Now, for me, my favorite Metallica song is One. My favorite band is Korn. So to have Korn do a cover of my favorite Metallica song, my mind was blown. I'm just like, yep, I'm done. This is, if my life were to end right now, I got to hear that and I am good.
Now, there was I believe a bunch of live performances that were put together in this piece that were going on during we'll call it the Bud Light Lime 19 times, because we don't want to get the cursed YouTubers after us for saying words you can't say on YouTube.
Right.
But during those times, this performance was put on when people were doing things remotely, and I believe this was different performances of Metallica tracks, and one of those being done by Korn. They had done one, if I'm not mistaken, and they did it better than Metallica did on that particular showing that we had seen. And that's no slight against Metallica. I love Metallica and all, and the song is phenomenal, but Korn does it just awesome. They do it justice, big time.
They definitely do. I'm very happy and pleased with it, and I would love to hear them maybe redo it again. Like, let's put the entire song on the album. Right? Because this one here, I'm pretty sure it was, but it didn't feel like it was the entire song.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it would just be so nice if Korn were to redo it again, put it onto, hopefully, the next album that they're doing, and give it to me. Just give it to me. Come on.
just bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah, so I mean, outside of that, we next up got the Greatest Hits Volume 1 for the band, so bringing all their best hits together. But this also, again, came with your share of covers. One that came out as a single, that would have been the cover of Cameo's Word Up.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy as it is, music video and song. I love both on this one. I think this was a fun side of Korn on this particular track. They enjoyed it. They knew what it was. You take it for what it is. It's a fun cover track. And then speaking of cover tracks, how about 3 of them in a row in the form of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, parts 1, 2, and 3. Some people not fans of this. I think Jonathan Davis does it justice, and I'm a massive Pink Floyd fan. So again, I don't love hearing everybody take on Pink Floyd music, but I really, really appreciated this.
I did too, and I appreciated that they did all 3 parts.
Yes.
Yeah. You get a lot of artists that will, kind of do it. They'll do just the first part.
And then they just the second's the famous piece.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, like, that's it. Like, no. This is, we need to have all 3 parts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that song's
I almost went all Home Alone
so.
there.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't do Pink Floyd Another Break in the Wall without doing all three, because it's telling a story. It builds upon itself. That's how the whole album works out. When, even though those three songs on Pink Floyd's The Wall album are dissected with other tracks in between, even putting them together back to back to back sounds like one big masterpiece of a track. And that's what Korn did here. And I love them for it. I absolutely do. This was a great, great cover.
It was. I loved every little bit of it, and I'm happy that we got it.
Yeah, me too. So we can go from the greatest hits over to the next release. And I know that at this point in time, like, I remember getting this album. I liked this album. And then for a while, I'm like, do I really like this album? And I had to think back, especially when going into this. I'm like, I hadn't listened to See You on the Other Side for quite a few years. And I'm like, I don't know that I love it as much as I want to believe I did. So I go back and listen to this thing, and I know a lot of people are huge fans of this. This album, all of a sudden, just rose up for me, going back and listening to it at this point. There is some badass tracks on this one. Some experimental stuff with the Twisted Transistor that I thought was very unique. Has a very, very comical music video to accompany it as well, too.
Yeah.
And again, showed the band trying to step out of their comfort zone and try different. And we would see more different coming up very soon. But this album, I think that people should maybe not sleep on and go back and take a listen. It's not as bad as people crapped on it at first. This album is actually quite solid.
I enjoyed this album. It's mid-range for me. It definitely is. And I think just because I was hoping that we were going to get more OG Korn coming from it, because it had been a while. We just went through the Greatest Hits album, and it's like, okay, cool, Greatest Hits album, that's all OG shit. Maybe we're gonna be getting ourselves an OG album once again. And instead we got See You on the Other Side, and we're like, I did enjoy Twisted Transistor, though.
Oh yeah,
my children enjoyed Twisted Transistor, so I'm okay with that. It's a very different kind of, I don't want to say dubstep-y, because it's not necessarily full dubstep, but it's more EDM, maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I felt like it was their way of trying to do, kind of like following up, doing the cover of Cameo's Word Up. It kind of felt in that vein, but their take on doing their own original for it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it was fantastic, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, some of the tracks, like outside of Twisted Transistor, like, you got Politics, Coming Undone. Liar is a great song as well, too. And like songs that are regularly in the band's arsenal when they play live sets still. So they're still very fond of a lot of the work on this album. And going back and listening, I grew a newer appreciation. I don't disagree with you about mid-range, because again, as we're starting to get into some of the newer stuff, believe it or not, this has taken a turn for the better in so many ways. And we're going to get that very, very shortly here, because this is a band that I didn't expect would go on an up climb, but they've gone on a serious up climb over the last little while.
Right.
Here is where this hit a little bit of a downfall for me. And we're going to talk about the untitled 8th studio album from Korn. I still to this day cannot get into this album. I tried again with this listen through. I listened through it. It's not that I can't listen to it, but none of it sticks for me. Like, not one little bit of it. It really felt like just, I don't know how to put it. I can't put my finger on it, Karl, but this one is just one that I could almost forget about. Like, even the singles from it just don't really have that same kind of oomph that I expect from a Korn album, personally.
Definitely not. I think, okay, so Low Point, 100%.
Yes,
unfortunately.
It's my least favorite. Yeah.
But Love and Luxury was a banger for me. But that's about it off of that entire album.
Yeah.
Off of like 13 tracks on that album, something like that. That, like,
15
that was
if you have the deluxe edition.
Oh. Yeah, Love and Luxury was the only one that I really liked.
Yeah. So we don't have
Which
to spend a whole
sucks.
lot of time on this one.
Nope.
Well, we're going to go right past it. Again, not on either one of our favorites, so not a lot to explain to you guys. Then comes up Korn 3, Remember Who You Are. And going back to this one, I will say it still doesn't rank super high for me, but that's not necessarily saying it's bad. This was a return more to form in many ways for Korn. I don't think it quite hit the highs of the return to form we would start to see following this record or shortly after. But I do believe that this was the one that especially maybe got people's attention again, woke them up. Like, you haven't heard Korn in a little while. Well, guess what? We're coming back and we're going to hit you heavy. We're going to get you and you're not going to see it coming. So I have an appreciation for it, but it would still rank a little bit lower for me on a personal scale with this one.
So I think maybe a good way to put this is that they weren't really, how can I say this? They weren't trying to reinvent who they were. They weren't trying to reinvent Korn, but they were more or less rehashing or recycling the original, the OG stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And it didn't need to be reborn, but recycled, definitely this was. Good album, but not one that really stuck or resonated with me. There was some good stuff on there. Oildale was great. Pop a Pill, I thought, was awesome. Lead the Parade was good for me. I know it's not a fan favorite for a lot of people, but again, it was another Korn album. And at this point, for me, at least, being a fan since 93, I'm starting to go, is this getting to be too much now?
Yeah.
Right. And I hate to even say that, but that's the point that I was at with this album. I'm like, I think I'm oversaturated with Korn. Oh,
burnt out.
But thankfully, shit got better.
Yeah, it sure did. And again, the next album might not be the one that everybody agrees helped them get better. I thought this next experiment in their discography was quite entertaining. I liked this a lot more than people usually do. And I will sit here and defend it. The Path of Totality, which is their work with different artists throughout the dubstep community, making an album that is heavy metal and dubstep. And from the moment I was ever shown dubstep, I'm like, why is this not being used in heavy metal? I'm like, if they were, I always said like Static X would have been a perfect band to incorporate dubstep and heavy metal together. That was just something I'd hoped for. So when I heard Korn was doing it, I'm like, I need to hear this. And I was not disappointed, Karl. Let me tell you, I am a fan of the Path of Totality personally.
I am too. A guilty pleasure of mine is listening to a little bit of dubstep once in a while. I do enjoy listening to some dubstep. This was around the time, okay, we're looking like this is now like what, 2012 we're looking. So my 2011, 2012, around there, I can't remember exactly now. 2011 is when it was released. I got it up right there. So my youngest was listening to dubstep. My oldest was listening to dubstep. That's what the kids were listening to, right?
Yeah.
And they turned me on to the names like Skrillex, Downlink, a couple more. I can't even remember
Excision
right now.
would be another big one that was on there.
Kill the Noise.
Yeah.
That, they as well. My kids turned me on to that, and because at the time I had a nice little kind of sportsy kind of vehicle with two 12-inch subs in the back, and you know, the loud boom 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 going on, and the dubstep was good for the boom boom boom.
Oh yeah.
And then you come with this, and I'm like, holy shit. Now, me thinking about this a little bit differently, I'm going, this is a great way for me to connect on a totally different level with my children by incorporating the music that they're into, the music that I'm into, and we're melding them together. And now we have a more of a bond over. That's what this album was for me. This was a
Nice.
bonding album, and I think that's probably why it has such a close place to my heart.
That's awesome. It's always great when you have a special connection that will bring you into a certain album, and that's understandable for sure. And I mean, I think that it's very underappreciated what they did to blend the two genres together. I did want to mention too, because I forgot to mention it, that David, the original drummer, was replaced on Korn 3, the previous album, by Ray, who is the current drummer for Korn.
Yes.
So this was actually his second time out with the band on album. And I gotta say, like, as much as I loved the fact that David was the original guy, Ray is a very tight drummer. And I think that Path of Totality, leading into what we're about to talk to in the next few albums, really shows just how badass this guy is on the sticks.
Oh yeah, definitely it does. 100%. You have to keep up.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going to include dubstep in there. Dubstep is a lot of, you know, different tones, different levels, and different beats and different speeds that you have to adapt to. So for Ray to adapt to all of that, good on him. Damn right.
Yeah. Huge step for him. And then from there, this is when things really start to get interesting for the band. We go into the next album and the return of a fan favorite of the group. We're talking about longtime guitarist Brian Head Welsh returning for the Paradigm Shift. Now, I'm curious what you think about this one, because again, on a personal level, Path of Totality is a little bit better. I think the nostalgia of bringing Head back on this one was great. I love the album still, but it's still, I think, compared to the next three, which are the most recent three albums we're going to talk about, I think this is where they're starting to hit their stride. They're getting there, but I think it's with the next album that we're going to talk about that they really said, we're back and better than ever.
Yeah, this one here, the Paradigm Shift, was exactly as it's called. They totally shifted the entire paradigm of what you thought or knew about Korn.
Yeah.
And I loved that about it. So they were showing you that you could have the OG shit that is deep, dark, heavy metal going on, but then we're going to throw in some rap. We're going to throw in some dubstep, and then you never know what we're going to have next. But we're going to totally shift absolutely everything. We're going to shift everything that you ever thought about. And that's, for me, what this album was. Not a lot on this really went mainstream, like, at all. I don't think any of these actually went mainstream, like played on radio.
Little, like, I think that might have been the only one that maybe, like, I know that and Spike in My Veins were the singles from it, but I don't think is in comparison to what we've seen, it didn't quite hit the strides that the band has had.
No, definitely not. So I mean, it's, for this album, good album. I enjoyed this album, and I enjoyed that it kind of went back a little bit to the roots, but kind of stayed relevant to the time of what this was now, 2015, 2016 that we're looking at.
I think before that, because the next album was 2016. I think 2015 Serenity is, yeah, we're going to get into 2015. This would have been released about 2012. Hold on here.
Maybe 13.
Something like that, in around there. Yeah, if I'm looking correctly. So, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, 2013, definitely a time of, just things going through and changing. And this was a good shift for them. to kind of transition into kind of these next 3 albums. That's
yeah. As longtime fans, I'm glad we're on the same page here, Karl, because again, we seem to have that same love for the band, same love for these albums. And we're talking about the next album. This is where they really hit a home run for me, really got my attention fully back. While I liked bits and pieces of these stuff we were just talking about, I did like the Path of Totality, but the Serenity of Suffering woke everybody up again to this band and just how damn good that they could be. This one had commercial success. This one had singles that were hitting all the strides. It has a duet with Corey Taylor, and a great one at that too. This album, it's dark, it's melodic, it's heavy. It goes heavier at times than we've seen Korn go to in many, many years. This one said, we're giving you old school, but we're going to put a brand new spin on it here and show you a side of us you haven't quite seen. And man, they hit us with some face melters with the Serenity of Suffering.
They definitely did. This for me was definitely a home run. It was a home run for a lot of other people as well. On a review aggregator website, it got so Metacritic is where it came from. It got a 67 out of 100 rating. It's based on 9 reviews indicating a general favorable response from the critics. All Music wrote that, without pandering to career peak nostalgia, Korn deftly executed all the hallmarks that have come to define their song or their sound, calling it one of their best albums. Metal Hammer, one of the big ones, one of the big magazines that are out there, Metal Hammer said that Serenity of Suffering is like a selection box of Korn's defining moments. Like Rolling Stone saying that Suffering is heavy enough to stand proudly in the Korn canon, but not daring enough to be much else, is what they wrote. But I think that they were onto something there when they said that, because this one stands on its own. You could include it in the Korn canon if you wanted to, but I think this one just really stands on its own, and it doesn't have to be much else than what it is.
No, it really doesn't. And it just, it blew my mind. I knew that this was, I'm right back into this. I'm grabbed in by every track on that album. I still can listen to it quite frequently. Oh, yeah. I like every single track on the Serenity of Suffering. No blemishes there. And you want to talk about no blemishes. And it's interesting because when I first picked up the next album, The Nothing, I wasn't sure what to think. And there is some moments on here that was like a first listen through them. Jesus, wow. Like they are going heavier than they have ever heavied in their entire career. This late in their career, songs like Cold, where I was like, wow, where did that come from? Where has that been? I took a couple of listens before I really got into The Nothing, but once I did, I was like, damn, The Nothing is even a step further ahead than what Serenity of Suffering was, and I didn't think that possible. I thought that I was going to be taking a step backwards. No, I went forwards with this. I love The Nothing.
I definitely did too. Because it was that deep, dark, heavy Korn that I was used to. You'll Never Find Me. Definitely. Idiosyncrasies.
That's Idiosyncrasy. So good. I love that song.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have played that one for a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine that have, that listened to Korn before, but then kind of turned away. I'm like, no, dude, you got to listen to this one. The majority of them have listened and gone, yeah, that didn't do anything for me. And I'm like,
what
the hell is wrong with you, man? How did this not do something for you? For me, it did something. it did something. And like it just track 11, they talk about harder.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what this album was. This one was harder than we have been hit before when it comes to Korn over the last 10 years, I would say. To come back to this isn't nothing. This is everything.
It really is. It was so damn good. So many face melters on there. I can still listen to it front to back. Every track on this album, so many times. So good. Ranks right up there. And again, as we're going along, I'm just going to talk about these steps that they've taken at the end of their career, which only makes me more excited for the fact that they say they're working on their next studio album already. And so the one that follows the Nothing, the most recent of the albums, we're talking about Requiem, and this thing is a piece of art. Karl, we both were into this from day one. I know talking to you immediately upon listening to this album, we just got right into it. This is fantastic. Not as heavy as the Nothing or Serenity of Suffering, but with a sound that says Korn, but also has something different to offer, a different voice to offer than what any of the previous installments in their entire catalog have done yet to date. Requiem is a piece of art, and I will say that through and through. The songs on here are beautifully mastered, and even some of the ones that didn't make the singles category are standout banger tracks throughout. And the best part was they debut this album, and they do it with, I don't know if you saw the live performance within the church, I believe that they did that in.
Yep.
Oh, that was so good. So good.
So that whole pageantry that they did for the release of the Requiem album, where they had them inside the church, and I believe it was in Las Vegas that they did this. It aired on YouTube for free, but at midnight, my time, midnight Eastern time.
It was 10 o'clock here or 11 o'clock here, something like that.
I didn't give a shit. I stayed up and I made sure that I watched that. And to be honest with you, okay. So yes, you've heard me swear on this episode a couple of times, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm a religious person who loves heavy metal. Okay. Yes, it sounds odd, but for this album with Requiem, to see the area that they did it in, for them to have done it in the church like that, just set a whole different tone and a whole different mood for me, at least. Being somebody who is spiritual, it blew me away. And yes, some of the songs, we got, they didn't swear. They didn't use the curse words inside the church, which I was like, good for them. Like, I loved that. They could have said, bullshit, we don't care, we're going to sing it the way that it's written. But no, they had that respect.
Yep.
Right? And I absolutely loved that. And I cried. I'm not afraid to admit it, people. I cried while this was going on, because it was Korn, and just because of how everything hit. The candles, man. Yeah. Just the dark, the lights are dimmed, just the candles that were there with them playing. It was like, oh yeah, baby. Oh, sorry, I went off there.
No, it's all good, Karl. That's the beautiful thing about 90% of the heavy metal world, is that they're so non-judgmental that it doesn't matter what wake of life you're from, what your religious beliefs are, or anything like that. Metal is for everybody. Yeah. Metal is for everybody. And yes, Korn were very respectful in the way that they treated this and everything like that. I thought it was a beautifully done piece of work. I absolutely adore them for putting this together, and the whole album just speaks wonders. I know that Start the Healing debuted. It became a #1 hit. This actually peaked at #1 on the Mediabase active rock charts. So a big hit for them there. Then, of course, Worst is on its way. Really rocked the charts there for quite some time, even playing over on the Octane charts. There are good friends over at SiriusXM Octane where we intake a lot of this wonderful music that we do listen to. And now, of course, Lost in the Grandeur, which I think has a really cool riff within it kind of thing. And I believe that the band has said it's one that they've wanted to use for quite some time. They just did not have the right track for it. So when the opportunity arose to put it with this album on Lost in the Grandeur, that's where it did it. And when it hits so well. Love this album. Fantastic.
And so this album is so interesting. There's only 9 tracks that are on this album. It is a much smaller album from what people are used to. Only 32 minutes and 36 seconds in length is this album. But you get lost in it. You get enthralled with this album that you don't even realize how short it is, because you're just feeling every single part, from Forgotten to Worst is on its way. You feel all of it all the way through. And I think give it a little bit of time, but I think we're going to start to see Let the Dark Do the Rest maybe become a little bit more popular. I don't know.
It's a phenomenal track, and it should get more attention. I'd be curious to see what they do, because again, they said shortly after this album came out that they already were tracking towards their next studio album. So with the trend that we're seeing from Korn, and I hope that we're not doing ourselves a disjustice here, but I'm hoping that this trend continues, at least to a point where I'm loving the albums on the same level I have with the last 3. If it stays in that range, I will forever continue to listen to everything this band puts out.
Oh yes, me too. Now, definitely.
Now, I did want to talk about a couple of like the songs that didn't make 2 albums. So some of the rarities, the B-sides, the stuff that was used in soundtracks in particular. I wanted to know from you if there was a song in particular that hasn't been a Korn album song that stands out.
No. I think that's all I can say is no.
Okay, because there's a couple for me, because I do really like Sean Olsen from the Crow soundtrack. I think that's a great tune. Could have even fit somewhere in Life is Peachy. I think it came out in that same vein too. So that one, and then even though it's not an amazing track, but Kick the PA is kind of a fun track that I believe that was used in the Spawn soundtrack. So that one as well too. I know I listened religiously to those things when they came out, but I also loved the movies that they accompanied as well. So it kind of helps.
Yeah, no, definitely it would.
Now that's the discography side of things. Now, outside of that, is there any facts or anything like that you'd like to talk about? Any moments that you'd like to talk about from this band?
At some point, I wish to have my Korn moments, as yes, I have not seen my favorite band live yet. So kind of what I'm hoping is that maybe sometime this year, maybe very early January, February next year, that we're going to get another Korn album. And then maybe they'll hit some of the festivals, because my plans are to go back to Grand Rapids, Michigan for Upheaval Festival.
Nice.
And I know that they have played Upheaval Festival before. So I think I would be real happy if I were to finally get my Korn moment, and I would be pushing my way to the front. I don't care.
Yeah, it's been quite a while for me too, so I would like to get the opportunity to see them again. I really hope it for your sake that you do get the opportunity to see them. I know that my time was during Issues when they had Powerman 5000 and Papa Roach opening for them, a couple of young up-and-coming bands at the time, so to speak. It was a great experience. They put on a very, very awesome live show, and going to a festival to see them would be absolutely phenomenal, because you're only going to get the best of the best tracks. Any live performance I've seen, like if you go online and check out YouTube, check out the the performance they actually did during the shutdown times, so to speak. They did a performance inside the same same studio that Netflix films, I believe, Stranger Things in, if I'm not mistaken, and they did a live concert performance with no fans, but you wouldn't know it. I paid for the damn thing. I got the good sound system going on, cranked the hell out of that afternoon, that rock show, and I was like, I haven't been able to rock out for a long time. I'm sitting here, I'm sipping back beers, and I'm rocking out to Korn in my living room like I was there live, Karl. I probably even started a one-man mosh pit that day.
Oh, that would have been awesome to see, a one-man mosh pit.
It was a great time. I loved every second of it. You know, it's been phenomenal being able to sit here and talk about a band that we both love and appreciate. And we're definitely going to do this more as well, too. We're going to talk about other bands as well as we get the opportunities. Of course, that's going to come with our schedule and everything. So we're not going to put a stamp on it as to when you'll get the next track of this particular show, Got the Podlife. But we'll make sure that when you do, we're going to have enough insight to be bringing you something that's rocking and rolling well past the hour mark here, so that you got lots of content to find out just what drives us and what we love about music as well. But speaking of that, Karl, I think this is the appropriate time to let everybody know we've got a little show we do together that's coming back very, very soon. If you want to tell the wonderful people about season 3 of a little show we've got.
A little show we got is called Beats and Beat Downs. Season 3 will be coming, where we talk about the influences of music in the world of professional wrestling. Very cool show that we've done. We did pretty much an A to Z in the first 2 seasons. And I think now we're going to change it up a little bit, and we're not going to be going through the alphabet again, but we are going to be bringing you still some really, really good content when it comes to those influences.
We may even have an extended season this season, because we just found so many that we wanted to tell you guys about. So be on the lookout for that. You're going to be able to find that, of course, over at Turnbuckle Studios. You're going to be able to find it as well here at our local establishment. And again, if you want to check out our local establishment, I want to encourage you to check out that ticker down below. All of the different social media, as well as all the different places that you can watch our content through Twitch, through YouTube. We appreciate the subscribes over on the YouTube side with the big old thumbs up. That lets the world know about the different content we got going on here. On the Twitch side, follows. We do appreciate those, you guys. Hey, if you're willing to give us a sub on the Twitch side too, we do appreciate it. As we said, this is, if you're watching on Twitch, this is a pre-recorded show as well as on YouTube. So leave us comments. We will get back to them as soon as possible for you guys. And before we get to our own personal way to find out, we also want to tell you about our sponsors here at our local establishment. We're talking about our good friends over at Rogue Energy. Rogue Energy are an alternative to those energy drinks you find in the store. If you're looking for a vegan-friendly, low-calorie, great tasting, and zero sugar alternative to refuel your mind and kick in your hydration, you want to go check them out at RogueEnergy.com. Use that promo code OLEPODS for 10% off of your order. Now, Karl, where can the wonderful people of the world reach out to you and let them know what you've got coming up in the not too distant future?
Not too distant future, I have got coming up a Monday night stream where we talk about Monday Night Raw as it happens live. We call it our Raw Watch Along. Me joined alongside a few other people, wonderful people with our local establishment. Tuesdays, I have Turnbuckle Talk that comes to you at 8:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The easiest place for you to find me is going to be at my link tree, linktr.ee/Karl Karufel. Just like the name says right over there, that's how it's spelled.
That's where you're going to be able to find my good friend Karl Karufel there. And of course, watch out for us for that season 3 of Beatdowns. There's my information there down below. That's where you're going to be able to reach out to me. Of course, this being a Friday that this is releasing means that Sunday is just around the corner. You're going to be able to join me at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time with my brunch buster brother Chris Parrish as we bring you a fun off the rails experience talking about the world of professional wrestling, all the news and all the kind of fun you want in between. Then you're going to be able to join me on Thursday night as usual. Myself and Papa Smoke's going to be rocking things with Ring Respect Radio. If you're following along on the YouTube side, you're also going to see many times you'll find I'm dropping episodes of the Bravado. It's my quick little reviews of things I've seen, whether it be movies, television, or listening into music. You can check that out on a regular basis by subscribing and giving us a thumbs up. As always, we appreciate every single one of you out in the world. We want you to go out, enjoy music just as much as Karl and I do. Rock on, my friends, until the next track of Got the Pod Life. We appreciate you.